I'm Scott Stramick. I'm going to be taking you through a quick editing tutorial on how I capture images of Vivid Sydney. So for a lot of my attendees that attended the Vivid Night photography workshop, I showed them a few different techniques of how to capture a long exposure photo with a really long shutter speed and then a very short exposure. And the reason we've done this is we want to blend those two images together to create an epic photo rather than just having the one long exposure and all the projections blending and blurring into one. So the trick is that we have our camera and tripod nice and sturdy and stable without touching or adjusting the position or the zoom of our lens. The reason we do that is we want to be able to layer those images perfectly over the top of each other so that there's no variation to the shot. Then we can easily brush in the details that we want within the photo with a quick few little steps and masks. So let's jump right in. We've just imported our images into Lightroom, and here we are with our first image. So this is our long exposure image, and this is the before. So before I've done any adjustments on the basics tab, and I'll reveal the edit afterwards. So everything was shot in RAW, and with RAW we have a lot more data to work with to be able to edit this file. So you can see that the Opera House is quite bright at the moment, but after a quick edit, I can pull a lot of that detail back. The only issue I find with this image is that we're lacking a lot of detail in those projections. So over a 15-second exposure, we have a lot of information of that projection moving and shifting, and it creates a blur of multiple images. Sometimes it can look quite cool. This image has a bit of a watercolor effect, but I actually want to use a shorter exposure like this here and be able to use that projection and paste it over the top of the other image. So these are the two images I'm going to be working with, and this is the before here, and the after I've just brightened it up to allow me to get more detail in some of the areas of the Opera House. Now don't worry about the rest of the scene. We're not going to be using that in this photo. We want to just make sure that the Opera House projection looks its best, and at the moment that detail there is fantastic. So we're going to go back to our two images, these two here. What we're going to do is select them. So we'll click our first image, hold the Shift key, select both. So they're both selected. Then we right click, edit in, and you can go to edit in Adobe Photoshop 2022. What I like to do is skip a few steps in the Photoshop process and just open as layers in Photoshop. Now, when I do this, what it'll do is layer multiple images on top of each other. So however many images you've added into that selection, for this image it's just two, it will then load those images up on top of each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to rearrange the layers. So in the layers tab here, we're just going to rename these long exposure base and short exposure top. Now the reason I want the black image on top is I want to only let through the projection on the Opera House on top of our other image. Now the next thing we need to do is, while these images are on top of each other and I didn't move the tripod, I have noticed that there is a little misalignment between these images. Now, generally you can select both of the images holding the Shift key using both layers and going to Edit, Auto Align Layers, clicking on Automatic and hitting OK. But you may find that you come up against this issue where you have a warning symbol pop up saying there's not enough overlap detected within the alignment of this image. If that's the situation, what we can do is select our top layer, reduce the opacity, and zoom our image in. And we can see where that misalignment is. If we go to our move tool, we can click and drag that around. And that looks like it's aligned to me. That's perfect, great. So I'm going to increase my opacity back to normal. And what we're going to do is select the Marquee tool, M on your keyboard, or hit Marquee. going to select our top layer, go to Select and Mask at the top, and select Subject. And when we hit Select Subject, it allows us to just select the subject that we want. Now, sometimes it doesn't do a very good job. We may need to reduce some areas of its selection. I'll just do this nice and quick. And if we zoom in, you can see that it hasn't quite done a perfect job. So I'm going to process this section a little bit quicker. It's going to be a little bit rough around the edges, but you can take as long as you want to get this perfect alignment and perfect brushing around the sails and the edges here. Make sure you don't miss any parts that you want to keep, and we can go from there. Remember that the output too is always as a layer mask. Just going to feather this just a little bit by 0.2 pixels. We don't want to add too much onto that image because the projection is quite bright and vibrant. So we just want it to blend in quite nicely with the overall image. So once we've created our selection, it creates a layer mask on that layer and is already cut out. You can see here, this layer mask, everything is black underneath. And the white section there is literally just our cutout of the Opera House, what we selected in our selected mask. If I turn this off and on, you can see how it's just affecting that particular scene. So it's as simple as that. Those two are now combined. I can come to my little hamburger over the side here and merge down. It'll merge those together. I will, while I'm in Photoshop, will also use my lasso tool, go over my section of the roof that I don't want in my photo, fill with content aware, and that's done a very good job. I'm just going to go back over that little section, do that once more. There we go. Very good. Okay, that image is ready to save, and that will save right back into Lightroom for us. So this is our end result. The image, it's come straight back from Photoshop. There are a few adjustments that I want to do on the overall image. I want to crop it, and I also want to just help the foreground interest in the water with the reflections. I want to just enhance that a little bit more. So I'm going to take this image into the Develop module. I'm going to crop my image to 5:4 and just realign so the Opera House is right at the center of this image. Going to increase a bit of contrast. And I'm also going to add just a linear gradient on the water here. And this is an added thing that I want to kind of add to my photo just to give it a little bit more of a lift. And try and blend the colors that you see in the light projection a little bit more evenly across this scene. And that's looking a little bit better. We'll have a quick look at before and after. So I just wanted to add a bit more of yellow in there because there's a lot more yellow in this projection here. Just so it looks a little bit more aligned with our overall look. I hope you really enjoyed the process of watching this editing tutorial. If you have any questions on Lightroom or Photoshop, I run photographic workshops on both the software and the shooting process. So if you have any questions or you want to come along to a workshop, don't forget to check out my website, scottsdramic.com. The links are down below. Thanks very much. See you next time. Bye.